Hello, I'm Jay, owner of Volunteer Audio in Oliver Springs, Tennessee, and today I'm making a video to go over the factory amp options in these new Harley Davidsons, the 2023.5 and newer CVOs, and the 24 and up base model bikes. What we're going to do is we're going to use our dyno, and we're going to do what we call a hot swap test. We're going to actually test each amplifier in the same bike, off the same power supply, off the same track, off the same dyno, back to back to back, doing the exact same test. The only variable is going to be the amplifier that's used. This is going to give us the most accurate results on how much more power each amp has over the previous one. We'll look at the specs that the amp said it should do. We'll also look at what it actually puts out. So watch this video. I think you're going to find it informative, and I think it turned out to be a really cool video. All right, so before I get started in this video, I need to tell you, you need to like this video. I want you to find it on Facebook, go to Volunteer Audio, follow us on Facebook, and share this video in your social media. By doing so, if you have one of these newer bikes, you're gonna be entered, no obligation to buy, but you'll be entered in a drawing to win a new Hertz premium A2B system, Hertz amplifier, our interface, and Hertz speakers for your Harley at no cost to you. So definitely you want to like this video and you want to share it in your social media. Once you've shared it, send me a message on at Volunteer Audio on Facebook showing me the link where you shared it on your personal account. All right, let's get to the video. All right, so this isn't the first time that we've done this. Actually, when I got this 24 base model bike, one of the first videos I did on it was a testing this smaller factory amplifier. Now we got some really, really low results. And we actually got a call from Harley asking about it. We had some meetings with them, and I know they were working on trying to get more out of it. So this video is going to be more of an update video. They gave me some suggestions on things they'd like us to try with the dyno, which we have done, as well as they did some software updates to try to get more out of that amp to make you happier. They did get some increase. I think you'll think it's really amazing how much they got out of that amp compared to our original video. And that original video was only 9 watts. We'll also be testing the next step up. That's the CVO amplifier. So we'll do the base model amp, we'll do the CVO amp. This one should be 500 watts according to its specs. We'll take that out of the bike and then we'll throw in the Hertz amplifier with our new A2B interface. And we'll do the same exact test with it. Now, all the parameters of this test, let me go over some details because we're doing everything we can to get the most power out of these. I want this to be a good video. I want it to make sure that we share proper, accurate, honest results. Now, we have a different kind of dyno than Rockford Fosgate normally uses. We use an AD1 dyno made by SMD. It's a Tony D'Amore piece of equipment. It's a very, very nice dyno. It's really the industry standard for most everybody that sells an aftermarket amplifier. Now, some of the manufacturers actually use something called an audio precision dyno. So the results are slightly different than ours. And what I would say is ours are a little bit more real world. Let's talk about, you could do the power of an engine on a dyno, and they have the ability to test power at the crank. Well, we're going to be testing power at the wheels. We're going to be going through the bike's electrical system, and we're going to be using the factory radio. So that's going to take and add a few more levels of complexity to our test, but we're going to make sure that we use the same radio, the infotainment system in this 24 Roadglide. We're going to be using the same battery and charging system. We're going to be using the same test track. And we're going to be using the same wiring on all of these tests, along with the same dyno. So we should be getting a very, very accurate test because the only variable is going to be which one of these is plugged into the bike. So watch as we go through this test. I think you'll be amazed at the different amounts of power we get out of each one of these. So let's go to the bike. Let's test the base model amp first. All right, so one of the things when I talked to Harley Davidson corporate about our amp dyno test we did of the base model amp, they wanted me to try something else. The only thing we didn't have connected between the dyno and the bike was the charging system. We were using the bike's battery to power the amp, and the dyno was powered from a wall supply. They thought that that loop could cause a little more distortion and give a not fair reading on their amplifier. Now, I tested that amp multiple ways. The most I got of it back then, the most wattage I got was 11 watts, but I consistently got 9 watts in a certified run at 2 ohm. So we're going to redo this test, and I've already done this test, and I wanted to share it with you live where nobody can dispute how we're doing it, and I wanted to go over the details because they did get more power. And anytime that something gets better, I want to show you that better. Now, I don't think that that was the reason, but it wasn't anything to do with our bike or the way the dyno was set up. This is what I don't think the reason was. I think the reason was some software updates that were done that actually got more power out of it. But for now, that's what I wanted to show you this. This is power leaving the battery and the power supply and everything in our dyno and running to connect to the bike's battery. We're running this in what I would consider to be the best possible scenario for the bike. We have a lithium battery, an excess power Titanate battery that's very strong, fully charged under the seat of the bike. That is also connected to a very large battery that's a large marine size battery. Normally it would go on a boat that's in the bottom of our test station. We do this so that we have very, very consistent power between each one of our tests. We also have a power supply from Excess Power that is generating, it's actually set to do 14.6 volts. Now, you lose a little bit of that as it runs into all the batteries and all this is going. So we want to see roughly 14.4 to get an accurate test of the maximum output of these amplifiers. We'll probably see above 14, but it's going to vary a little bit. Just as we run this test, we'll use a little bit of power. We're also plugged into the front speaker outputs in the bike. They're running to the front of the dyno. We're going to use the same wiring running to the front on each one of these tests. There's not going to be any variables about how the power, the battery, or the wiring is done. The only change is going to be the amplifier. And the first one is going to be that base model amplifier. And I think you'll be impressed to see what it now does after a few software updates. Now, I'm not going to go into why or what or how or why it was so low to begin with, but I know when I rode our bike, when we got this bike new, that it was so bad I couldn't hear the sound at all above 30 to 40 miles an hour. Now, I've seen some comments saying that changing the windshield was good for almost 10 dB of sound. And if that be the case, that's great, but also know what's also going to give you 10 dB of sound, and that's going to be more power than we have from the factory. So let's check out and see how much power we get in this test. We'll then show you what the next step up from Harley will do, and then we'll show you what our amplifier that we believe is the right solution will do. So we're going to get the bike powered up, and we're going to be using a test track from SMD. It's going to be test track number 9. That's what they tell us to do on a dyno. You'll also see that on the screen of our second camera. So I have a second camera recording the front of the dyno. We'll overlay that on the video. So as we're doing this test, you'll be able to see what the dyno is saying each step of the way so that nothing is hidden and everything's accurate. I just want you to know that everything that we do, we want to make sure is accurate. We're not trying to mislead you. This is not to push you in one necessarily direction or the other, but it's to educate you on what you're getting with each scenario. We think you're smart enough to make the right decision when you're given the right info. So I'll get the bike on, I'll get the dyno turned on, and we'll get into this first test. All right, so every one of these tests will be done with the EQ set to HD signature tune. That has been the highest output setting we've found in the radio as it maxes all of the EQ bands all the way out. The track we'll be playing is track 9 of the AD1 test tracks. That is a sweep, so it's going to start at a very low volume, and it's going to ramp up output until we meet the distortion or clipping point of the amplifier. That gives us an accurate, full power result on the amplifier that there's really no other way to get a very consistent reading than to do this test to distortion. Our dyno will read that distortion, and it will cut off at 1%. We're going to do all 3 of these tests in the 2 ohm rating because that is the rating that Harley uses for their amps. Now, all of these amps could do 4 ohm or 2 ohm loads, but we're going to consistently go with 2 ohms so we can show you that difference at that load. Now, my dyno is on. I'll get it recording. And what we're going to do is we're going to do what's called a certified run, which is going to take into account that distortion, because anything above 1% distortion is a little more, is actually enough to blow speakers, and it is not going to be in the usable range of power. So I'm going to set our impedance to 2 ohm. And then you're going to see, it's going to say certified dyno run ready at 2 ohm. It's going to say use test track 4 or 9. Test track 4 is for subwoofers, 9 is for mids and highs or mids and high amps. So now all I got to do is hit start dyno. Make sure my volume's all the way up in the radio, which it is now. And then I'm going to hit play on our track. We'll see what we get. All right, so it's starting to read some power. It sees the test tone now. As it continues to climb in power, it eventually will hit, we'll see a red distortion light, and that's where the test will stop. All right, so our first test, the dyno is seeing 14.06 volts. We got 37 watts and 39 watts, depending on the left and right speaker. It's normal to have those off just a little bit. The dyno's at 68 degrees. That's important because as these dynos get hotter, they tend to read a little lower in power. 39 and 37 is a huge increase from the 9 watts we got on our first test. And I believe 100% that increase is based on some software updates that were done in the infotainment unit. And I'm really glad Harley did it because 9 watts was just ridiculous and everybody was so upset with their bike. Now, many of you as time went on said, well, I think it's not as bad as it was, or it's better. Well, it was after those updates. You're correct. You have about 4 times the power you started with. Now, we know it takes roughly 100 watts of RMS power to clearly hear your audio at highway speeds, but there's a few other factors like the efficiency of the speakers. So you have to have power, you also have to have a speaker that's loud at that power. So that's why our next video we'll be doing an efficiency test. We'll be showing you what these high-powered amplifiers do, and the lower-powered ones as well, with their speakers. So the speakers that Harley recommended as well as the efficient speakers we use on our Hertz system. I think you'll really want to see that and be able to see that sound on screen in decibels measured by a microphone. All right, 39 is a lot better. This amplifier was rated, it's supposed to be a 200 watt amp. They rated it 50 watts RMS power times 4 at 2 ohm. Now I will tell you, you're not going to be able to test it at times 4 because they never turned on the rear channels and they haven't given you access to do that. I have been able to trick it in software, activate those rear channels as we were doing our A2B development, and they are the same strength as the front ones. I don't know why Harley's got you locked out and where you can't use them, but I assume it's because they know we need a lot more power than that to drive rear speakers and hear them at highway speeds. All right, so we'll swap our amp out from that smaller amplifier to the 500 amp and or 500 watt, and we'll rerun that test. All right, so we're going to be removing that smaller amplifier. Just going to unplug it and take it out. And I've got one of the 500 watt CVO amps here. Now we actually own 2 of the CVOs, so we've had several of these amplifiers to do testing with. This is the one that you would buy at Harley to upgrade your audio at your local dealership. And it does just plug into the fairing, so it's a really simple thing to change out. The thing is, there's not a lot of power in the fairing to run a bigger amp. So there's not a lot of power on that power and ground wires that are in the factory plug, so it kind of limits how much they can get. Now they do claim that this amplifier is a 500 watt amp, 125 watts times 4 at 2 ohms. So we're going to be running a 2 ohm test, same track. We'll see how this one does. Now, when you change your amp, you got to go in and you've got to do a speaker configuration. I've done that previously with this amp, and we've seen after you've updated the amplifier, updated the radio, and we are running amp software 1.5. That's the latest software in it that we do see. It's pretty automatic. It's going to connect to the radio, and it's going to already know what it's connected to. We'll go in and we'll verify that. All right, so Harley did some infotainment updates that allowed you to no longer have to go back to the dealer to flash a radio when you do an upgrade. And what they've got is if you go into your sound in the menu of the radio and go to speaker setup, you can do a couple things. You can view what amplifier is in the bike. This one says Apollo P&A primary amp. That is the larger amp. You can also see the status and the speaker configuration. It shows that we're in a stage 3 configuration. That's the highest output of this 500 watt amplifier. So we're also in this HD signature tune. We're going to stay there and we're going to back out and we're going to get back to our USB. Let's get our dyno reset, ready for another run, and we'll test and see how much power we get now. So we're going to start by resetting our dyno. We'll go ahead and back up so you can see, well, here you got it. Certified dyno run at less than 1% distortion, 2 ohm, and that's our current voltage. Let's go ahead and start our test and see what we get. All right, we've got signal starting to climb in power. The last one was what, 37, 38 watts? We're going a lot higher this time. All right, so we've shut off 76 watts and 78 watts. Now remember, the amplifier claims to do this 125 watts at 2 ohm times 4. Now we're only measuring 2 of them because the rear ones would work, but I didn't want the sound from this blasting while we're doing it. We got 76 and 78. Now we know 100 watts is where we want to be or more. We know this because we talk to a lot of you. We do thousands and thousands of installs on Harleys, and we do a lot of systems for them, and 100 watts seems to be where it doesn't matter about your windshield, about your helmet style, and so on. And all those things are factors, but it's loud enough that they don't become as big a factor. All right, so we're going to go back up front. We're going to change our amp out again. We're going to go to our Hertz amp with our A2B interface and see what we get out of that. Let's go ahead and turn our bike off and move it back up front. All right, so this is a pretty quick change out. We're just going to remove that factory amp, and we're going to plug in our Hertz amplifier. Now this Hertz amp is a lot larger in power, and we did run larger power and ground wire into the fairing from the battery. You can see that in our step-by-step install videos. It is an 8-gauge power wire, because to create more power, you're going to have more amperage, and that requires a larger wire ran to the fairing. It's not a hard task. It's all plug and play with our system, and this is our A2B system. I'm just going to drop it in where it goes. All right, all we've got to do is, it's all plug and play, so it plugs into that factory amp connector. We have our A2B interface, which is what communicates with the radio and creates our audio signal, and then we're going to plug up our power and ground that ran from the battery up. This is just going to give us the additional amperage we need for this amp to run properly. Now, when you get this from Volunteer Audio, it's not only plug and play. We fully tuned the DSP that's inside the A2B interface, and we've used a 4-channel oscilloscope to perfectly set the settings in the amplifier. All the filters are set, the gains are set. It is simply run the power and ground and connect it, put it in the fairing like we show you in the videos, and plug it in. Now we'll go into our radio since it's already set up for the stage 3 audio. We shouldn't have to do any additional setup, but I'll turn it on, I'll verify that it sees our amp, and then we'll run the same test again. All right, so we're back on our radio, just checking out our device status, what amp's in there. It now sees the Volunteer Audio powered by Siren HD PA1. We'll go to speaker configuration. It's still set to stage 3. It sees everything. So we're going to back out. We'll get back to our music. Let's run our test. Volume all the way up. All right, so we're going to go ahead and reset our dyno again. Still sitting at about 69 degrees, so it hasn't got hot. We're still sitting at 14.3 on our power supply, but that's a little lower by the time it gets to the actual amp. All right, so I'm going to hit play. And let's see what kind of power we get out of this setup. All right, that is a huge number, 250 and 251. Now, here's the deal. Hertz rates this amplifier to do 250 watts RMS at 2 ohm. As you see, they hit it right on the money. And this is in the bike going through all the electrical system and all the wiring that's in it. We got full amount of power. So when I did my previous videos, several places tried to say we did the test wrong, that there was something wrong with the dyno, that it didn't work right, because they thought it would get rated power or more from the manufacturer. This is a clear-cut test to show you not only what each one does, but the only variable being the amplifier, we see that the Hertz amp actually performs and does what it should. Now, some of you are probably thinking, you just said I needed 100 watts. Why in the world are you putting an amp in that does 250 watts? Well, in the next video, I'm going to show you the speakers connected to it. We're going to listen to it. And the speakers we're going to use are 4 ohm speakers, not 2 ohm. Amps run cooler at 4 ohm. They also have a little better sound quality at 4 ohm than they do at 2 ohm, but it leaves us room to expand our system. With the factory Harley amplifiers being 2 ohm stable and they use 2 ohm speakers, yeah, they're trying to get every ounce of power out of their amp, but they've built an amp that, in my opinion, is too small for our needs. So with the Hertz amp having the power it has, we can put 4 ohm speakers in our upper fairing and our lids, but we can also add tour pack speakers or lower speakers. Or in the case of some of the new things we have coming out, like our drop-in subwoofers, we can use this one amplifier to run 4 speakers on the front of the amp and 2 subs off the back. This means you buy 1 amp, you expand upon your system without having to start over again. We have way more than enough power to hear it clearly at highway speeds, to get that clarity that we want, and to have the woofers of the speakers actually give us good mid-bass response. This test is a really cool test to be able to show you. I appreciate you watching, and I want you to comment below and let me know what do you think about the power results between the 3 systems. Again, if you shared this video, go to Facebook, find this video on Facebook, not YouTube, share it in your social media, and by sharing it, we're going to enter you in to win one of these systems, the full Hertz system, turnkey, at no obligation to buy from you. All you have to do is watch this video and share it. So that's cool too. If you have questions about the system, we have a knowledgeable sales team, great tech staff. We got great step-by-step install videos if you want to see more about what it takes to put this in at volunteeraudio.com. But you can call us at 1-844-30-AUDIO. We'd love to talk to you about the system, your bike, your build, your budget, go over everything it takes to upgrade your audio and make you really, really happy with it. And we thank you so much for watching this video to learn more, but there's so much more we can go over if you reach out to us, or go to volunteeraudio.com, go to our plug-and-play amp and speaker packages, select your bike's year and model, and we've got a lot of great information there to share with you as well. Watch our next video. It's so important. This is cool to see numbers. I want to show you those numbers in action, powering a set of speakers and seeing how loud it is. We'll talk about SPL, what decibel readings mean, what meets certain loudnesses, and we'll compare and see just how much louder this is with tools. Not somebody telling you it's great, somebody showing you it's great with the right way to do that. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to Volunteer Audio to hear the latest, to learn the latest about Harley Audio as it comes out. We'll show you the new products, how to install it, and we'll do cool tests like this to show you the results from it. But I also want you to like the video. It's free to you, moves us up in search results, and it really helps other people find our videos. So thank you so much for doing that. Follow us on Facebook as well. If you're a Facebook user like I am, it makes it easy for you to share with your friends and check out things there. Keeps you in the loop. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, God bless.